All right.
Just got to get our Rumble. All right, ready?
Yep.
Welcome to Sports, Clicks, and Politics. With your hosts, Hussong and me, Shawn Hannon.
Welcome to episode 120 of Sports, Clicks, and Politics, an upgraded stream edition of Sports, Clicks, and Politics. Hopefully less dropped frames and a smoother connection for all you folks at home. Thank you for joining us. I am Shawn Hannon, joined as always by the wonderful, handsome Ben Hussong.
You forgot charming.
Charming Ben Hussong.
Come on, man. Get it together.
I mean, only so many adjectives there in the world there to describe you, Mr.
That's
Hussong. So it's been a while.
I know. I haven't been
Couple weeks. You've been on traveling. You're doing the family stuff here. Welcome back to blustery Central New York.
It's good to be here.
How was your weekend?
It was great.
Did you do anything Hussong-esque with the family?
Of course. We did all kinds of Hussong-esque things with the family. We went down. I think we talked about it last time. The Ray Caverns, Monticello on the way down, Savannah, Jacksonville.
Looking for bug-out places for the apocalypse?
I mean, the Ray Caverns, if you have not been there, go check that place out. It is crazy. And it's very impressive. I was not at all claustrophobic. I thought I might be a little. It made me feel way better about moving underground at some point. But that aside.
So you were getting your feet wet with the underground living? Is that what you're saying?
Listen, I would love to tell you that it was my idea and I had that thought, but it was all my wife. She came up with this. She found it. She planned it. I had nothing to do with it. I just reaped the benefits.
You're just along.
Is basically
nice.
like my entire life of being married to her, which is really nice. But it was a great time. We went down to Tampa, Florida for a while. We enjoyed it, hit Busch Gardens, saw family, did everything like that, then drove back up, stayed in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then hit the road, finished the ride up the next day. I went to the Bills-Jets game that Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Which was very fun despite the rain and the snow and the general cold weather.
Yeah.
But I had a great time, met some family. My uncle and my cousins from out of town were going, and they had an extra ticket, so I broke my general stance of never attending a Bills game in cold weather ever again to go to that game.
And was there a reason why you have that stance to begin with? I mean, just an experience at a cold weather?
Tickets for so long when they were so bad.
Did I ever tell you I went to the coldest game in the NFL history at
No.
Buffalo Bills? Yeah, so this must have been 1993 or 4, whatever the date of the game was, late 93 or early 94, depending on what it was. Bills, Raiders.
Okay.
Coldest game in NFL history, colder than the Ice Bowl. I took my mom.
Obviously.
You probably don't remember this guy, but first-round draft pick from the Bills, and I'm guessing 93 or 92. Thomas Smith, defensive back, didn't make it. Bought some shoes for me at the place I was working at in Buffalo at the time, and he was very happy with me. The next day I wasn't working. He dropped off 2 tickets for me for the game. I went there, and they were like 7th row, 35-yard line. It was like awesome seats, right? Except that it was very, very cold. Brought my mom. She was at the time a Raiders fan, so...
Okay.
Made sense for there. I had my Steelers parka on. She did not wear Raiders stuff on purpose. I still got snowballs thrown at me, even though my team had been eliminated the week before.
All right. I'm just going to say it.
Go ahead.
You deserved it. If the Steelers were playing and you wore a Steelers parka, I would say there's no need for that. But if the team is not playing...
It was the coldest. It was the only warm jacket I had.
All right,
It's literally. I was living in Buffalo. I was dumb 21-year-old, and I was like, I need to go to the game. And I'm like, I knew ahead of time. I'm like,
it's going to be cold.
This is going to be... No. I was like, this is going to be bad for me wearing a bullseye on my back.
Yes.
But again, they had lost the previous week to the Chiefs on a crazy game. I don't want to go into that, but they would have. The Bills actually would have ended up. It would have been the Steelers-Bills game that I would have had the tickets for if all the thing would have worked out crazily. But anyway, best piece of advice I got for the cold stadium, and I want to pass this on to you and anybody else listening at home.
Yeah.
Put a blanket on the ground in front of your seat and put your feet on that.
It's a good idea, actually.
Do not have your feet on the concrete, cement, whatever. Your feet will free. That literally the best. Somebody, I don't even know who it was. Somebody told me, it's like, you're going to this game. You need to bring an extra blanket just for your feet. I'm like, okay, perfect. Done. It was awesome. It was cold. Bills won. It was like a Tim Brown Raiders era, that game. Maybe Rich Gannon was on that team. I don't know. But yeah, that was it was actually I think the Bills ended up just killing them too. But
I was gonna say, I will bet you any amount of money that game was not as exciting as the Raiders' last game.
No. Did you happen to be watching that when it happened? I was watching it when it happened because I have Red Zone on, so I was like, I had Patriots defense in that, and they did. I won some money, so it wasn't whatever. But literally watching that, going the first lateral from Stevenson, I was like, all right, maybe he's trying to get out of bounds so they can, I don't know, run another play or whatever. He's going to pitch it to Myers so he could run out of bounds because he couldn't get out of bounds. No, pitched it to him. Myers apparently played quarterback back in the day.
Got a little cocky.
Got way cocky and underthrew a pass by about 10 yards to his quarterback, 25 yards behind where he was. And, of course, Chandler Jones just standing there in the middle, trucked Mac Jones to the ground and then just waltzed in for the game-winning touchdown with no time on the clock.
I mean, that's the definition of adding insult to injury. Is Chandler Jones buried Mac Jones on the field. No relation. But, I mean, just ran through him with a Derrick Henry-esque stiff arm as he shoved Mac Jones into the turf and went untouched for the game-winning touchdown. That is the funniest way to lose a game I think I've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some funny ones. Here it is. January 15th, 1994. Coldest home game versus the Raiders. There it is. Well, I guess it was a close game, 29-23. So it wasn't a blowout. But
who can remember?
I could tell you it was cold. If people are looking at the, I mean, I'm not in these pictures, but this is, I mean, maybe you were. Were you 94?
I was not. Mostly because I would have been 9 years old at the time.
I mean, you could have been there.
I know, but I was not.
All right. Well, before we get into more sports talk and maybe some more Bills talk even going forward. Before we do that, hopefully everybody at home here will leave us a rate and review on the audio podcast. Like and share the video here to all your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you can be notified when we go live in the future here. So let's touch on your Bills.
Sure.
Locked up a playoff spot, yeah? So does that mean they won the division too, I'm assuming? Yeah?
No.
Oh, no. So they just locked up a playoff spot.
They're guaranteed a playoff spot, but they have not locked up the division yet.
Right. And so this feel like we're getting some separation, at least in the AFC. I feel like there's a kind of a clear group of teams who I feel like are...
The tiers are becoming apparent.
Yes. In the NFC, I feel like it's even getting a little bit clouded with teams like the Lions all of a sudden, like... 6-1
in the fun to watch.
Start 1-6, go 6-1. Now you're 7-7 in the playoff race. I don't know how that works out, but
I think they're going to make the playoffs.
It's very possible. Like I said, I don't think it's. They 2 weeks ago, or at one point they were. I think so. I saw it on the when they were 1-6, they had a 1% chance of making the playoffs. Now they're a 36% chance of making the playoffs. Yeah. So
wild.
So let's talk about the Bills a little bit. Congratulations, I guess, for your was it 4 straight playoff years?
Yeah, I had a lot to do with it. So I mean,
no, I mean you're integral part of the moral exuberance between the teams. So
put a lot of good energy out there. Lots and lots of positive vibes going to Buffalo from me.
And you got some help. I don't know. The Lions beat the Jets. I don't know if that's really help or not, but I mean, I guess in theory it should be help. But
I mean, listen, it's great when every other team in the division loses on the day you win. The only thing that could have made it better is if the Texans could have held off the Chiefs and gotten that done.
Yeah, that was crazy too. I almost played the Houston defense on my fantasy team because I'm a crazy person, but I didn't. I picked the Patriots. They were better. Any hot takes from the NFL other than the Bills clinching their playoff spot?
It was a good game. I think Miami has the Bills have a problem stopping the run. It's becoming very obvious that it's a problem that they're giving up huge. huge gains. I think Miami did their best impression of the Bills this weekend. With the run was working. They were averaging about 7.5 yards per carry, so naturally they went to the pass. Because, God bless offensive coordinators who outsmart themselves. The head coach of the Dolphins looks like the guy from Revenge of the Nerds grew up and started watching
which guy?
football.
Oh, the main guy?
The main guy.
Okay, I remember him.
Right. So I don't know why he's so unlikable. He shouldn't be.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's part of this new wave of just like data young coaches, right, where they're just basically immersed into the books a little bit.
Maybe I'm like a crotchety old man now.
Yeah,
I don't like these people. Like,
I mean,
it's all right. It's fine.
that's a given.
Right. I mean, the thing is, like, I don't dislike. That's not true. I don't like Robert Saleh either. I don't dislike him. He seems like a genuine guy. Just I don't think he's a great coach. I think
Flores ended up with the Steelers like assistant
did
coach.
he really?
Yeah.
Good for him. Brian Flores is a great coach.
Yeah, he'll be in the league next year.
Yeah, he should get a head coaching job. There's no question. Brian Dabble's doing a great job with New York Giants. I can't believe that team's going to the playoffs. That's crazy. Every team in the NFC East is
I mean, they're in it for sure.
Now,
the NFC is a train wreck, so that
helps.
gives the NFC East a leg up for sure.
That does help that they're a train wreck.
I mean, but the Cowboys lost to the Jaguars.
It's not great news.
I mean, it's just
after being up considerably. Not like...
But those are the reasons why I thought the Cowboys defense was just better than that, and I don't know if they had any injuries this week or not, but I mean, giving up 40 points to the Jaguars is a problem.
They got a good offense, man. Trevor Lawrence is a good QB. And Zay Jones.
He's not 40 points good.
Nah, it's a fair point. But apparently he is.
I mean, he is, but
speaking of Brian Flores.
I mean, Jacksonville defense got their game-winning touchdowns.
You know where Brian Flores could end up next year is Indianapolis, because there's no way Jeff Saturday's keeping that job at this point.
Well, I don't know. How do you know? He's best buddies with the owner.
Oh my God.
That's how he got the job to begin with.
You literally gave up the largest comeback in the history of the NFL.
Do you feel bad that Frank Reich no longer gets that?
Cousins. Yes. Frank Reich was way more deserving of that than Kirk Cousins. Are you kidding me?
Kirk Cousins has kind of like a crazy Frank Reich history in himself. He's up and down, crazy all over the place.
Frank Reich was just a career backup quarterback. It was never anything else. Like Kirk Cousins getting that guarantee.
Did you know that Frank Reich engineered the greatest quarterback in college history as well?
I did not know
when that. I think he was in Maryland.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think maybe he was behind Boomer Esiason and he got hurt and then came in and led the comeback. I'm
amazing.
Pulling shit out of my head here that I don't even know if that's real or not.
We'll roll with it.
I feel like that's real, but maybe it's not.
No, it's great. I love that it was Frank Reich. It was just so funny that it was a backup quarterback that did it. Like, that's what made it funny. Kirk Cousins, God bless him. I have nothing against Kirk Cousins. I do tend to, belittle him a lot. But he's not a bad quarterback. He's just not anywhere near as good as he should be. Whereas I think Frank Reich exceeded every expectation that could have possibly been placed on somebody of his talent. Like, he came in and got the job done, and he was never going to be anything more than a backup quarterback. He's a great head coach. He'll probably get hired somewhere else next year, too, maybe the year after.
Do you think there's a big Venn diagram, or I don't know if it's a Venn diagram with only two, but two circles of backup quarterbacks and good head coaches? Do you think there's a, some backup quarterbacks they're not there because they're talented, right? They're there because they know the system, they know how to manage a game, they know how to whatever. And so I'm wondering if the same attributes apply to being a good head coach.
I think generally across sports, if you're very talented, you're probably not going to be a good coach. If you're a very talented player, you're probably not going to make a very good coach.
Yeah, Larry Bird said the same thing. That's why he stopped coaching.
Right. Larry Bird was the exception. Like, he did a great job as a coach, as a GM, and as a player. His thing was never like uber talented. He could never out jump anybody. He could not run. He was meaner. He was smarter. He knew how to outplay people and he practiced harder than anybody else at the time. So that's where Larry Bird is the exception. But for the most part, it was legitimately if you're a backup quarterback, yeah, you're not that talented. I mean, obviously, look, compared to me, yes, you're talented.
Right. Yeah, no, everything's relative.
In the relative scheme of the NFL, there's a reason the most talented players in any sport make terrible coaches 99 times out of 100.
Yeah, because they expect those players to be able to do the things that they were doing on the field or court or whatever. So.
Right. And those people are anomalies. And the other thing is if you're I could say this from my own experience of being a very mediocre athlete throughout all of high school, but that it played better than I was, but you had to be smarter. Like, when I stepped onto a basketball court and I'm looking around like, oh God. So the question is, like, do you just give up, or do you go, all right, how am I going to get around him? Like, he's going to do this. You have to think your way around the court. Whereas somebody who's uber talented coming onto the same court looking at me is like,
I'm jumping over this dude.
I got this. And you know what? He's right. He's got me. There's no question. So I think that there is some truth to that. I think backup quarterbacks, you have to know so much. I actually think the best head coaches should be special teams coaches. I think that makes the most sense because I do believe a head coach should not call plays, doesn't want to get too involved on any one side. You have to delegate everything else out if you're going to be a truly great head coach, in my humble opinion. But in reality, it all comes down to, do you have a great quarterback?
Yeah, that's in the NFL for sure. In the NFL, you got to have a quarterback. I mean, I guess Tim Tebow won a playoff game, so it's not 100% true. But
I mean,
it proves the rule, I guess.
Confirmation, you nailed the Frank Reich history.
Oh, good. He Maryland, what did he back up Boomer Esiason?
I don't have that one yet, but he just said Shawn recalls exactly the Frank Reich history.
Good.
So I think so.
Okay, good.
I think it must be it.
Crazy. Frank Reich, man of opportunity.
He was Ryan Fitzpatrick before Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Exactly right. Anything I said, I feel like it's the Chiefs, the Bengals, and the Bills in the AFC. If the Dolphins get hot, I think they might be the next best team. Maybe the Chargers was one of those two, I feel like. I'm not sold on the Ravens. So, but the NFC, we mentioned a little bit, Eagles and Cowboys both have clinched. Vikings, again, have clinched a division. Niners, we called that probably about 7 weeks ago, pretty much at the trade. They haven't lost since, and I mean they're on their fourth quarterback now.
They're doing well,
and they've kind of, those teams have separated, and then it's literally just a pile of muck. Starting at the Giants at 8-5-1, all the way down to these 5-9 teams. There's like 10 teams available for these last 3 or 4 spots. So the Lions are one of them. I don't know, crazy.
The Lions are legitimately a good offensive team. They can score points.
Yeah,
which is shocking.
I'm surprised, but I mean they have some players.
They also have Jared Goff. This does not make sense.
But he's been on a team where he knows that I'm not great and I can just get the ball to my best players. Like when he was with the Rams, right? Just get the ball to your players and have at it. But game manager. But if you have talent, people can break plays and whatever. I mean, I kind of feel like that's what Tua is, a kind of a game manager. But his skill position players are really good.
Tua is just not a very good quarterback.
No, I don't think so. That's what I'm saying. His skill position players are just so good that
I don't think he's long for this league. Not in a starting role. I think if he goes,
he'll be knocked out of here with a concussion. So
I mean, he also is very small. But the last 3 weeks, if you see the stat disconnect when he's at home versus the road is really striking. So,
and it's actually even more than that. It's dome versus outside, because he plays okay in some
cold weather. I don't think he's built for it, and I think that people don't realize how big of an advantage Miami Dolphins have on home field advantage early in the season. When it's September, October, and it's still 90 degrees, and you're the opposing team in your dark colors on the sideline that has nothing but sun beating down on you the entire game, like you're gonna get heat stroke over there. It's amazing, and then they could beat teams there. But now you got to go on the road. Like, sorry, Miami, but you got to go to Buffalo. Even if you got to go to Kansas City. Kansas City gets cold in the winter, and it's outside. Cincinnati, cold, outside. New England's not there anymore, but at one time it was. Like, all these other teams that you got to go to, you need somebody that can win in that environment. Otherwise, you're going to be hurting.
Yeah, Dolphins need home games to advance in the playoffs. As with the Lions.
Tua did nothing to make me think, oh man, I was wrong about him. He's legit good.
No, I never thought he was good too. Like, he's been better than I had imagined.
Agreed.
But I feel like that's a product of the system and the skill position players.
I said that after the Bills-Dolphins game the first time, where I said, look, give him more games. I don't think this is going to work. Right now it's new and nobody knows what's happening. It takes 4 to 6 games and every defense is going to know tendencies. So at that point, if he's still getting it done, then you got a legit QB. But you got to get it done for more than 4 games for me to have any belief in you. And like I said, the game on Saturday night, that wasn't Tua that kept him in the game. It was Raheem Mostert averaging 7.5 yards a carry against the Bills defense. And then the Dolphins ingeniously deciding, all right, we're in the red zone. You know that guy that just ran us all the way down here in the last 5 plays? Have him block. This is Tua's show now. Tua throw. Oh, God, that ball's in the stands. Look at that. It was embarrassing. It was so nice to not have it be the Bills doing it, though. I was so happy. I was like, it's not just us. Other teams do the same dumb stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, people do dumb stuff. I mean, players do dumb stuff. I've been watching it for too long. But
coaches do dumb stuff. Coaches outthink themselves.
Yeah, there's a phrase in fantasy sports that we call the assumption of reasonable coaching. Where you're like, if the coach is reasonable, this is how it should go, and we're going to play accordingly. But then unreasonable coaches take over, and it all goes to hell. So.
Right. It is what it is. That's fine. And I just have to make this point on the record. The pass interference call at the end of the Bills game was 100% pass interference, and I don't know how anybody can argue that. The guy never turned around. He almost tackled the wide receiver, and the ball almost hit him. Like, that's not defense. I get you don't want to decide games on penalties. Well, tell your guy to at least turn around and pretend like he's trying to play the ball.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I don't recall that play off the top of my head, but I'm sure you're probably right.
Thanks.
You're always right. All right, let's switch a little bit gears here to, I don't know, Jeffrey Epstein. Does that seem like a good...
seamless transition as always.
Seamless transition. I mean, that's pretty much how we do it here because the world is a clown show, and the fact that you can transition... I mean, I do have a transition for the next one, which is mine as I just came up with it. But so you may have heard of this gentleman, Jeffrey Epstein.
I have.
So he has a bunch of rich and powerful friends.
Had.
I mean...
We don't have to go down
quote
there,
unquote.
But, yeah.
Maybe. We get a new unsealed documents coming to light here in the last few days here. This article is from December 14th, so about a week ago, a little less. Most of this comes from a deposition from Virginia Giuffre in the defamation suit with Ghislaine Maxwell, who basically... I think they settled this out of court, but anyway, all these documents are now coming to light. And I just want to highlight a couple of them because this lizard person, Alan Dershowitz, you may have heard of him. He gets thrown under the bus here in multiple plays, and so I'm just going to read here. So in 2017 deposition, Sarah Ransom, this is the one of the victims of Epstein, a young South African expat victimized by Epstein, claimed that Epstein coerced her into a threesome with Harvard law professor and future Donald Trump surrogate Alan Dershowitz. Now, Dershowitz was asked for in comment in this and basically said, I never met this person in my whole life, so can't wait for that picture to show up. Dershowitz gets mentioned in a couple times here, enough to where, I mean, I've already thought Dershowitz is part of this problem, and, I'm not going to get into this part of it. I don't even know what that means. Bleeding malehood. So I'm not going to read that part.
What?
Yeah. So apparently that's some identifying thing from Alan Dershowitz. Crazy. But really what I wanted to point out, there was a bunch of redacted stuff here. I think it was this last point that I wanted to kind of really... They were all terrified of Maxwell, which we... so this is, I think, stuff that we had already known, but this Sarah Ransom makes it known that basically these girls were used and handed out and loaned to Jeffrey Epstein's friends. Now, this deposition has all the names redacted, which are also not just the Johns, but also the recruiters, the girls who worked for or under Maxwell, who were basically pimping these young girls out to these rich dudes. It was everything we thought it was. I mean, these documents basically, other than giving the names, other than Alan Dershowitz, it basically lays out exactly what we had thought it was. So
the Jeffrey Epstein was basically running the Amway of pedophile sex rings.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's, I'm not sure anything's ever going to come to these until some of these girls, some of these names gets redacted, or somebody flips and testifies that was, part of the regime back then. I doubt any of that happens, but I did want to call out this person because the Sarah Ransom, she went to the New York Post to a reporter and said, this is all the stuff I have, basically gave her some details. And the girl, this reporter, and this is why I want to bring it to her attention, never ran with the story, Maureen Callahan of the New York Post. New York Post.
Oh, I thought you said Times.
Yeah, no, if I said it, I meant New York Post. New York Post is the thing. I don't know if she still works there or not, but at the time this was happening, I think 2004-ish, I think it was, she was working for the New York Post. But this victim, Sarah Ransom, basically got frustrated with the lack of going public with this information and basically said, I'm going to go public myself. And she talks about reaching out to the Russians. They were interested in the information. So I'm guessing that some people have this information, and whether or not it's corroborative enough or can be corroborated, I don't know. But she says she's gone to a Russian newspaper.
I was going to ask, who were the Russians? Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Say
no.
that, but Like, did she call Vladimir Putin? Like, hey.
Yeah, this was in an email to this reporter. She's like, I'm done with you. I'm going to Russia, and I'm going to give this information to Russia, basically. So I wonder if that was the genesis of all this Russia hate. We're like, oh, everything they say is propaganda and disinformation. We always do the truth. But I thought it was at least something to bring up that these documents came out and some new details. Nothing. I mean, it validates some of the depravity that was going on in that island and in his house in New York City and whatnot. But I think the Alan Dershowitz thing and this idea that one of the victims went to the New York Post early on and didn't get anywhere with it, probably the two biggest takeaways from this document. This girl thinks the CIA hacked her emails, which is probably probable.
I would assume
That's almost likely.
CIA hacked her emails. Yeah.
So who knows? Like I said, I'm not sure anything ever comes of this, but I thought there was a couple juicy details in there that I thought we should have covered anyway. Any hot takes on the Jeffrey Epstein unsealed documents?
It still boggles my mind that this isn't a bigger story. Like, everything that comes out just seems to corroborate what we thought was like worst case scenario of how bad and how big this was and how pervasive and how many people were involved, how many agencies must have been involved.
But that's what happens when the names are redacted, right? If all these names start coming out, then it's just like there's like a snowball effect, and people are like, okay, another one, and then I feel like that's those are the things that are holding back this from becoming mainstream story, because no one really knows who Leon Black is, to be honest with you. I mean,
fair.
Glenn Dubin.
Most people don't know who Alan Dershowitz is.
Sure, right. But Dershowitz at least has a public persona. Like Leon Black purposely probably does not.
Sure.
Glenn Dubin, same thing. Like these high finance guys, they're not trying to be in public. They're just trying to, do whatever they want with their money.
Fleece the world for all its money and live up.
And so until we get some of those names, I don't think the mainstream press will bite, and there just won't be momentum.
But it's not a matter of it's not just that the mainstream press isn't biting. They're not even looking. And then when you do, like, this girl went to a reporter and was like, hey, this is all I got. And she did nothing. Like, that's wild to me, especially given the low standards to which we know that reporters and journalists are actually held about their stories. Like, we got 3 straight years of Russiagate. All right. We got completely turned around. We had a reporter legitimately report on all these intelligence officials say that Hunter Biden's laptop is Russian disinformation. Like, all of it, God forbid, COVID, like all the stuff that got reported as fact during that monstrosity of a time period. So looking at all this just as objectively as I can, why would you not run with this story? That's the question that has no answer to me. It
has an answer.
It doesn't have a good answer.
Right, for sure. They're all nefarious
answers. Is bad, yes. Because you can't be worried that you're going to get it wrong, because, my God, everybody's gotten everything wrong for 4 years and not one person has lost a job. You can't say it's not salacious. It definitely is. It would definitely sell if you could even produce, hey, I got a source that says this. You legitimately had anonymous sources claiming that everything that we knew was wrong. Like, anonymous sources say that Donald Trump was peed on in a tape in Russia. Like, okay, well, when that turns out to be false, did anybody get fired? No, I had a source. Okay, cool. Like, the number of stuff that they got so wrong. Now, looking at all that, and here's the thing. Donald Trump has ties to Jeffrey Epstein. You could even probably get him going down with the ship. But it's going to cost you Bill Clinton.
Nobody wants to take down the ship.
It's going to cost you some on your own side. And I mean, I'm pretty good on the record here of like, take them all down. Every one of them. I don't care who's on the list. If you engaged in this, then you deserve whatever comes to you. So I got no sympathy for you. I have no empathy for you. Even if you just got caught up and you're like, oh, I didn't know she was 16. I thought she was 18. Like, all right, plead your case to the public court, and we'll have the public opinion decide who should be forgiven and who should not. But the cover-up is crazy.
Yeah. And we're going to get to the only bigger cover-up that I feel like has ever happened in the history next here. But,
here we go.
But, yeah, this is a intelligence cover-up. I'm just going to say it. So.
Oh, God, now we're going to get killed.
And speaking of intelligence cover-ups, Mr. Hussong, you had asked me if Tucker Carlson had really somehow claimed that the CIA was involved with the death of former President John F. Kennedy. Tucker says yes. Not just Tucker. Tucker has a source that says yes. So I'm going to try to play this this clip here. I think I got everything set up here.
I love your confidence.
I literally forgot to check and see if I did this before we got here, but let's find out. So this is from December 15th, so a few days ago. And I'm just going to it's a full 7-minute clip talking about this. I'm just going to play a couple minutes of it.
Okay.
Not that we're aware of. And it is illegal. In 1992, Congress passed the President John F. Kennedy Assassination Records Collection Act. And that act mandated full disclosure of all documents by 2017, 54 years after JFK was killed. The last administration promised to comply fully with that law, but under intense pressure from CIA Director Mike Pompeo, withheld in the end thousands of pages of CIA documents. Today, this afternoon, the Biden administration did exactly the same thing. That would be thousands of pages of documents after nearly 60 years, after the death of every single person involved. But we still can't see them. Clearly, it's not to protect any person. They're all dead. It's to protect an institution. But why? Well, today we decided to find out. We spoke to someone who had access to these still hidden CIA documents, a person who was deeply familiar with what they contain. We asked this person directly, did the CIA have a hand in the murder of John F. Kennedy, an American president? And here's the reply we received verbatim. Quote, the answer is yes. I believe they were involved. It's a whole different country from what we thought it was. It's all fake.
So, what do you think about that, Mr. Hussong?
I think he's probably right.
I mean, to say that people have been suspecting the CIA almost from the start is, not anything new like that. It's been talked about. There's been movies and books written all about this. So, who knows who Tucker's talking to, right?
CIA
but I think
probably does.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, probably. But I think his point is that even Trump and now Biden and whoever's in charge, nobody's putting these files out, and there's only one reason to not put them out, right? I get back to your point. There's no reason not to put this information out. As Tucker pointed out, everybody's dead. You're not hurting anybody's feelings. You're not hurting anybody's lifestyle. You're not hurting anybody's anything.
You're not putting anybody at risk.
Nobody's at risk. Like, let's see some information. I mean, it's hard to think that there's been so much about this. It's hard to think that the official story was real, right? Like, I mean, there's been so many holes shot into the Warren Commission and everything that went around that it seems more likely that there was a conspiracy of some sort to some degree, and it wasn't just a lone gunman and another lone gunman taking out the lone gunman, right? So,
listen, it's the same problem I have with a lot of these things. Like, all right, there's some stuff that just doesn't quite add up. All right, and if you look into the JFK assassination, there's definitely some oddities about it. I know some have been debunked, some are just sheer nonsense, but some are legitimate question marks. There also was the small matter of the fact that John F. Kennedy was definitely looking into reducing or abolishing CIA altogether.
Yeah, I could make a small handful of list reasons why the CIA would be like, yeah, let's take this guy out.
Right. And so, and because we were run by psychopaths at that time that genuinely wanted to have a nuclear war with Russia, and John F. Kennedy was like, the reason we didn't do it, he's looking at his Secretary of Defense, and they're like, all right, we're going to do it. We're going to lose 10 million, but they're going to lose 50 million, and we're going to end this. And he's like, are you insane? No, we're not launching a nuke. So, anyways, I don't know what the end game for that one was, but back to CIA. It would make sense if they did it, all right? But here's the flip side. Now they've got all these documents. They've got all this stuff. So if you are innocent, right? If you accused me of killing somebody and I say, like, look, we got tapes. I've been investigated 15 times. We did all this. Everything's there. It's all cut. Like, we did it. We didn't do anything wrong. And you're like, all right, well, can I see the evidence? And I go, well, no.
54 years for the JFK
and
evidence.
Then 54 years later, I'm dead. And you come back, you're like, well, now can we see the evidence? Like, no, it's just, we're not ready. Like, that doesn't cause a slight red flag to you. A little bit of you isn't going, oh, that's weird. This is akin to the FDA saying, well, we need 70 years to release the data on vaccine injury. I'm sorry, what? 70 years to release some PDFs? Ooh, that's not promising. That's Paul Pelosi having home security cameras and then not wanting to show any tapes at all because that would confirm his version of events. So this is the problem of people like myself who become conspiracy theorists over this. Like, there's such an easy way out, and the idea that you're not doing it, I guess this is my fundamental belief. CIA is not run by idiots.
Did you know, factoid, did you know that the words conspiracy theorist did not show up in the American lexicon until 1964? In reference to John F. Kennedy's assassination.
I did not know
That's
that.
what the birth of conspiracy theorists in the terminology was birthed out of the JFK assassination.
Interesting. But then you look back at what we know CIA did between MK Ultra, between Mockingbird, between Operation Paperclip. Like, they did some stuff.
Listen, watch this full video. So Tucker references a CIA operative who is also a psychiatrist who worked with MK Ultra, who visited Jack Ruby in his cell for some reason, and was the only psychiatrist who came out and was like, Jack Ruby's crazy. This guy is off his rocker. So, to your point, the CIA has operatives in every walk of life. Anywhere they want to have infiltration, they will do that. Ben is CIA. He has infiltrated the show. And
Gotcha.
and I'm not... to be surprised that the CIA is involved in assassinations or government overthrows or mind control or anything is like seemingly par for the course. It seems like that's what they do.
Oh my God.
That's all they do, right?
Look at like the drug wars in Latin America and Roger Clinton literally running drugs and guns out of an airport in Arkansas, and then gets a letter from Bill Barr like, oh, hey, your brother, tell him that we're going to take care of that job for him, and he'll be, when the time comes.
You should look into the history of the airline that used to run those drugs from Arkansas.
Oh, boy.
And what happened to that. It was a CIA-owned airline.
Oh, I did know that, actually.
Yeah.
And the CIA literally owned the company that sold everybody's encrypting software that like 80% of world governments were using, and the CIA owned the company that did it. Like, the things that these people do are nuts. And I guess, like, good for them. But watch Narcos on Netflix and watch what the CIA did. Like, this is what we know about. And going back to my previous stance of, like, they did all this. They did MK Ultra. They experimented on people with LSD as a mind control. They absolutely infiltrated media and reporting. They had people killed. They overthrew dictators. They overthrew legitimate governments. They've lied. They've run drugs for money. They've been caught. And how many of them got fired or went to prison?
None that I know of.
All right. So you think they stopped? Like, they got caught doing this. Nobody had any consequences whatsoever.
They had a moral epiphany, Ben.
And all of a sudden they're like, hey guys, maybe we should
stop.
tone this down. Like, come on, people. George H.W. Bush ran the CIA in the 80s while all this stuff was happening, and then became president. Like, and you think these people are about to stop? You're out of your mind.
Yeah, I love the Trumpers who think Pompeo was like an outsider. I'm like, you guys have lost your mind. You literally have the TDS on the wrong side, and you can't see past. I mean, Pompeo is a terrible person, and the fact that he gets defended
so
on.
Is Barr. Barr is a creature too. Like, these people were not outsiders.
Yeah, no, no, definitely not Barr.
Bill Barr, whose father hired Jeffrey Epstein at that school where he first started teaching.
Yeah,
and
who worked for the OSS,
who worked for CIA too. Yeah. Like, come on, guys, this is not Donald Trump.
You remember when he wrote a bunch of sci-fi books about kids?
Barr's dad.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, they're all weird.
Yes, they're all weird. And this is okay, but I personally, gun to my head, and my God, CIA, please don't put a gun to my head. I don't have any actual like power, proof, or anything else. Gun to my head if you ask me, hey, is it more likely that the official narrative is true, or that CIA was involved and executed either the actual assassination or the cover-up of the assassination?
All right, Ben, put you on the spot here.
Yeah.
Do you think there was more than one gunman
present that day
who fired at JFK?
I mean, it would make sense, but I don't know. I don't know the evidence well enough to tell you yes or no on that one. I'm gonna guess you're a yes.
I'm a yes.
Okay.
There's only so much damage the number of bullets they claim to have been fired to cause. There was bullets that missed that didn't there's almost no chance that there was just one person firing guns there. So
oh boy,
that's my take. All right. Anything else on the CAA JFK? Anything?
I don't think so. I think I love that people are talking about it openly, and then just release the documents. Let us see.
Yeah,
what
I mean, Tucker has
doing.
the most watched show in news, and he just basically said the CIA killed JFK.
I love watching the people. Like, you think about Fox News has forever been the Republican side of the aisle, and the Republicans have forever been not quite apologists for CIA and military,
but Law and Order.
But yeah, like the Law and Order party, and these people are like, hey, look, CIA does what they do. Like, and so those I grew up in this. I was that side for a long time, and then I sort of migrated to I don't know where, but. So I started having problems with like, hey, why are we just indiscriminately killing people in all these other countries? That seems wrong. Like, well, it's national security. It's just like, I don't think that's a good enough reason to just go let people get murdered. And so now the Tucker Carlson's coming out and like, guys, it's so much worse than you thought it was. And here's what we're looking at. Because 10 years ago, the idea that the number one news opinion show in the country would go on and say, CIA had John F. Kennedy assassinated would have been insane. Welcome to 2022, folks. I can't wait for 2023. This simulation is off the rails right now. I'm so pumped.
That's great. All right, let's switch to another crazy story. We've touched on this a couple times already, and I'm guessing if you're paying attention to us, this is not the first time you're going to hear the name Sam Bankman-Fried. So, Sam Bankman-Fried was finally arrested in the Bahamas, Mr. Hussong.
Good.
Did you know, or did you find it weird that he was arrested the day before he was scheduled to testify to Congress?
No, of course he was arrested the day before he was testifying.
So, do you
Congress.
think the people, especially the Democrats, who no, I'm not saying he didn't donate to Republicans. He did, and we'll find out all those people. And there's some lists of some of these Republicans, but it was far and away a Democrat priority for political contributions. And so do you think that maybe he was arrested to keep him from testifying and being questioned by some of the Republicans in the congressional testimony? I feel like that's probably the main reason.
I think that all right, let me back up a step because I'm going to go now. My tinfoil goes on right now.
Love it.
All right. So the whole idea behind Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX was going to become the vehicle through which the government regulated cryptocurrency. It was going to be like the Standard Oil company of cryptocurrency. So for those of you who don't know the history of John D. Rockefeller was not in fact a capitalist. John D. Rockefeller was essentially trying to combine everything together and become a monopolist so that Standard Oil company would supply all oil to everybody. And if you tried to compete with them, they bought you out. And so that way they could set the price, they set everything else. They had a complete monopoly and control over it. It's a brilliant business model. It's why John Rockefeller made so much money. I disagree with the idea of a monopoly, but credit where credit's due. It was a brilliant plan, and he wanted the state to come in and regulate it so that there could be no more competition. Essentially, he had the state, the federal government come in and regulate oil to such a point that nobody else could really come in and
luckily our country stopped that practice.
Yeah, thank God. So my thought is what it looks very likely to me was that FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, with the contacts he was making, with the people that he was discussing it with, that was going to be what FTX became. FTX was going to become the singular primary government-regulated exchange through which cryptocurrency transactions happen. Now, there's people like my co-host here who are ardent supporters of cryptocurrency that would never go for such a thing.
Let me correct you just a second. I'm an ardent supporter of Bitcoin.
Yes. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Anyways.
All the other cryptos are just fun to
dabble,
to wager on, but they're not.
Dogecoin.
No.
All right. Anyways.
I only buy it when the news says to buy it.
Fair enough. So I think that was what the angle was, and that's why you get away with this massive level of fraud and this massive level of incompetence, because you're playing a fixed game. There's no way you could listen to Sam Bankman-Fried talk for 5 minutes about cryptocurrency and not conclude you're a moron. You have no concept of what you're talking about at all, anything more than just a very, very surface level understanding of how this should work. So now if you bring Sam Bankman-Fried and now it collapsed, so now the regulators are coming in and being like, see, we got to regulate it because the plan didn't work. The plan didn't get executed because he turned out to be way less competent than these people even anticipated, and they knew he was a patsy. They didn't have any real faith in him, but they needed somebody they could control. That way they can regulate it, and here's the thing. If government regulates it, people get rich off of it, but for all the wrong reasons. That's why they want to regulate it. So they can't let him testify. because as soon as he testifies and people are interested, especially last week when this all went down, I watched some of this and it was hilarious. This is a multi-billion-dollar corporation that used QuickBooks. All right? I don't think people understand how insane
they had no board.
That is. They had no CFO, they had no CIO, they had no COO, they had nothing. They had a bunch of people with titles that collected money.
And I don't know if you use Signal, but they basically did all of their like internal financials like on a disappearing chat.
It's incredible. Like this guy legit, he took a loan from FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried did, where he signed as the recipient of the loan. And he signed as the only signature needed for the company to loan him money. That is never, ever, ever okay. This is wild. But they got squeezed because that was when I think it was Binance realized, and Binance owned a pretty good share in the company and squeezed them and basically said, we're going to sell this. And so, Sam Bankman-Fried had his Harry Potter loving girlfriend over at Alameda come in and be like, oh, go buy it. She's like, I'll buy it for $22 a coin. And here's the thing. If Binance does that, they make a ton of money. All right? Because there's no way it was worth $22 a coin. So they stood to make a ton of money. And they didn't. There's only one reason they chose not to do it. And they wanted to put FTX down. So they did. And they put FTX out of business. Because they sold it on the market where reasonable actors, the assumption of reasonable behavior, were looking at it and going, yeah, I'm not buying that for maybe 20 cents a coin. What are you talking about, $22? No, it's not worth anything, which was hilarious. Then it turns out there's all this fraud in the books and all this debt that they're not counting and all these assets that they're inflating. But anyways, back to my original point. You can't let him testify because if he goes in front and people listen to him, he would lack such credibility that the second you turn around and be like, see, this is why we need to regulate crypto, the people would have been like, no, you just can't let morons like this run it. Because everywhere else was fine, but, somehow he's got relationships with the head of the FCC, with the head of SEC, with all the people that are supposed to be regulating. Like, his dad wrote Elizabeth Warren's proposed tax law on cryptocurrency. You can't let this guy testify because he'll lose all. Now it becomes very obvious that the reason that this went south was not because crypto is inherently evil and it's a Garden of Eden full of snakes. No.
Because it was a Ponzi scheme set up from the beginning.
Because it was a Ponzi scheme from the beginning, and there's no way this dude is crafty enough to lie under oath to make it appear as anything else. This guy will get twisted upside down.
I wish I could play poker against Sam Bankman-Fried.
Oh, my God.
I'm not even a good poker player.
He'd give you his money.
The leg shaking and all the body twitching, like he has terrible tells.
That's why you can't let him testify, though, because they still want to regulate crypto. Let's be clear. They very
his
much
bill.
Still want
they're still pushing
Correct.
Sam Bankman-Fried's guidance as a regulatory bill.
Right. So if you let this guy testify and then be like, yeah, we based it on Sam Bankman-Fried's recommendation, you get laughed out of the room at that point of like, no.
Gillibrand was on that list.
Away. What?
Senator Gillibrand got like $8,000 for the from them because she's on that committee.
Good for her.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. She's useless.
And so there was this thought that he was going to fight extradition. Apparently that's not the case. So he should be back here somewhat soon. I don't know. I'm still waiting in the Bahamas.
That's how dumb this guy is. You were already in the Bahamas. You were in a country with no extradition. All you had to do was take that $1 billion that you stole from FTX and just keep going south. You could have gone to Greece. They don't have any extradition. You had the means. You could have gotten the hell out of Dodge, but for some reason, you actually believed the bullshit about yourself. You convinced yourself that you actually were the person that they made you out to be. You're not. You were a patsy. You were just a creation of people that were smarter and had worse intent than you, and you got played. And somewhere along the lines, you started believing it about yourself, that you really were this brilliant crypto, benevolent donation, new type of billionaire.
Or, Mr. Hussong, was he pumped up by people surrounding him, thinking he was that way, knowing, like, his parents, for example, right? Like, nobody can tell me that during the last, whatever, from 2019, whatever, or 18, whatever this was founded to today, that his parents weren't the most influential opinions and guidance. They're literally tax compliant lawyers, right? So he had people to lean on. Mm-hmm. And I want to point out this one thing here, in which I think you'll agree with me here. In total, I'm going to read from this CoinDesk article. In total, Bankman-Fried faces 8 charges. What's the recurring theme of these charges, Mr. Hussong? Conspiracy to commit wire fraud on customers. conspiracy to commit wire fraud on lenders, conspiracy to commit commodities fraud, conspiracy to commit securities fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, and conspiracy to commit money laundering, and conspiracy to defraud the U.S. and violate campaign finance laws. Mr. Hussong, how many people does it require for there to be a conspiracy?
More than one.
More than one is the right answer. His parents are going down. His parents are got to be a part of this. I mean, they're
not going down.
Going down in public. They'll go down in public. They'll be protected by the powers that be, but they will be dragged across the media as, nefarious actors in this whole thing too.
But you could say the conspiracy is just him. I wish I could. Caroline, is that the girl's name?
Carolyn Allison.
Carolyn Allison. There you go. It could just be them. Which there's definitely a conspiracy to defraud investors between those two because you can't take $10 billion out of one company and put it into another company.
She should use her math degree and just flip on this Sam Bankman-Fried guy. Because clearly she has no future. And nobody's hiring this person after listening to her talk for 3 seconds, right?
Rudy Havenstein on Twitter.
Yeah.
Best line I've seen.
One of the best follows on Twitter.
If you're not following him, you have to. He's absolutely wonderful. If you have any interest in finance or government regulation,
or Epstein.
He's big on Epstein, too. It's wonderful. But he said, it was a clip of something about Sam Bankman-Fried. It was right after it came out they were using QuickBooks. He goes, listen, I don't mean to sound cold-hearted, but if anybody listened to Sam Bankman-Fried talk for 5 minutes and then still gave him money, you deserve to lose everything. And I agree. Like, if you listen to this, Kevin O'Leary, the Mr. Wonderful, I couldn't possibly feel any more indifferent than I do about the fact that you lost so much money. You do this for a living, and you didn't take one look at that guy and go, no. And here's the thing. I believe Kevin O'Leary did know better, but I believe Kevin O'Leary understood the game that was behind the game, which was if the government's plan worked, FTX was going to be worth billions.
And I want to point out, since we just talked about their parents, Kevin O'Leary also basically boasted that his confidence came from the fact that Sam Bankman-Fried's parents were compliance lawyers. He's like, they're tax compliance lawyers. I should never have to worry about anything. So I'm paraphrasing that.
That's what I mean. No, you saw the end game. You knew, I think, unless Kevin O'Leary is just very lucky and stupid, which I don't believe. I think Kevin O'Leary does have a certain level of skill and a certain level of talent and experience doing this. And he's not
he should be in jail for killing people on a boat, but that's a different story.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
He killed somebody. He ran over somebody in a boat. But
really?
Claimed he wasn't driving.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it happened in Canada. But go ahead. Different story. You guys can look that up.
Oh, well, there's that.
That happened recently, like a few years ago. Not even.
Really?
Yeah.
Eesh, that's ugly.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Anyways.
He's not a good person.
None of these people are good people.
No,
all right, let's start there. Once you start with that, there's varying degrees of bad. And just because you're a bad person doesn't mean you're bad at this. All right? Like, this is what I mean. The CIA is not run by idiots. They're not good people, but holy crap, don't underestimate them. It would be so nice if every one of your opponents was stupid, if that was always the weakness, but it's not reality. So don't assume that about the people on the other side of any debate because it's crazy. SBF might be the exception. He is stupid. Like, he was in over his head. And he did not grasp the extent of what he was doing because if he did, he would have made some effort to cover it up. He would have made some effort to hide these dealings whatsoever. All right? The fact that he didn't, the fact that he used QuickBooks and Signal to run a company, the fact that he never even put together a board of yes men. It didn't even have to be like an objective board, just people that you know are going to get on board. The idea that you let the code get written where you could just take money in and out, the idea that you did this all on above board is hilarious incompetence. So I think somebody like Kevin O'Leary and a lot of these other big-time investors were looking at it not because they had utter faith in Sam Bankman-Fried. I think they had to justify to people why they were investing in Sam Bankman-Fried because the average Joe looking at that guy is going, you're giving money to him? But because they understood the end game, and the end game was this guy's connected, and at some point, we think crypto's going to get regulated. So when it does, who's going to be the exchange? And whoever is the exchange, that company is going to be worth billions of dollars. So it looks like it's going to be them. Now you can't let him testify because now every person with a pulse and working eyes is going to look at Sam Bankman-Fried and go, you guys wanted to make this guy in charge of the cryptocurrency exchange of America. This was your brilliant plan.
Yeah. And let me read a couple things from, and the reason why I say, or reason I thought about the fact that his parents are going to get dragged into this is because I'm reading an article from CNN Business, right? So that's very mainstream, whatever. And they're, excuse me, the article is trying to be critical of them, or at least try to paint the picture that they're being critical of them. But let me read a couple quotes here. So this is from, I don't know this person from a hole in the wall, but Matthew Barhoma, a criminal defense attorney in Los Angeles. I can't imagine a world where Bankman-Fried's parents were not his financial and legal advisors, right? So like,
Right.
That's what I was kind of saying before. Like that seems to have been a foregone conclusion. There cannot be any kind of, there's no way that SBF was doing all this without talking to his parents along the way. And the current or temporary CEO, John Ray, who's doing the restructuring of there, basically when he was testifying to Congress said that Mr. Bankman was providing legal advice. So I'm thinking he at least is going down. Maybe the mom doesn't go down because whatever, they save one of them. And when I say go down, I mean, maybe they get a slap on the wrist and a light, they have to go hang out with Ghislaine Maxwell in some ritzy
They're not going to
Palm Beach prison or some shit. But I don't know. I feel like there's still a bunch of moving parts on this, but the parents are going to be, they're going to be part of the discussion going forward. I'm almost guarantee it. So
exciting.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about COVID and vaccines.
Sure.
I mean, some of our favorite topics.
Why not?
Let's bring up Governor Ron DeSantis, who petitioned the Florida Supreme Court for a statewide grand jury on COVID-19 vaccines. He's going to try to find out if these things are any good or not. I mean, I'm not sure.
Answered.
Well, I mean, most people who've been paying attention already realize that they don't work and they're not safe, not effective or safe, either one of the promises given here. And again, it's hard for me to have optimistic outcome in my head for any of this stuff because we've just seen it run roughshod over everything, and it doesn't matter, who's right or who's wrong. They're going to do what they want to do. But I feel like Florida was there was other states that did this, but I think Florida, by pushing back on the COVID regulations, the lockdowns and the masks and the schools and all that stuff, literally prevented the whole country from being shut down for a long period of time because nobody could point to, hey, everybody's, they could have pointed to South Dakota and be like, yeah, well, they're South Dakota. They don't have anybody there. But you can't point to Florida and be like, nobody's there. They have all young people. Nobody's ever getting sick in Florida. Nope. They have the exact opposite. There are tons of people, a ton of old people, and they survived and they did better than every other state. So, excuse me, cough or whatever.
Cough or smoke,
I got to stop smoking the weed before the show. And so I'm hoping that maybe DeSantis in this effort can do the same thing with vaccines and draw some attention to they're clearly not effective at doing whatever they're doing, but really highlighting some of these safety concerns, which I think are mounting. I don't know. Have any hot takes on Florida taking on the vaccine manufacturers?
I think it's a good idea. I think the federal government has, as usual, abdicated its responsibility to protect us whatsoever, including FDA and CDC, and given blanket liability protection to the manufacturers of the vaccines. And we know corners were cut. We know data was hidden. We know that there's a lot of smoke. Not necessarily any fire. Not saying there's necessarily causation, but there seems to be a lot of data manipulation that was blatant. And to give these people the benefit of the doubt requires more trust in them than I'm capable of garnering. So I think it's a good idea. Now, I don't know the law in this area well enough to comment on this intelligently, but here's my question. If Florida does do this and they do an investigation and they have subpoena power and everything else, and they can prove that not only were the vaccines not as effective, they were oversold by Pfizer and Moderna, but if they can demonstrate actual fraud, if they can find it, and I'm not optimistic that they can. Again, as much as these people are evil, they're not stupid. The people that run Pfizer and Moderna. But if you can find that they actively defrauded the government, does that get rid of the liability protection? And I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, they can look all they want, but we gave them full protection.
Yeah. No, totally right. And like I said, maybe the state will be able to pry something out of these folks, and even if it's just some kind of disclosure would be, monumental. So
I think at this point, the problem we're going to have is there's no we talked about incentives a lot. Like whatever you incentivize people to do is generally what you'll get. That's just incentives work, from the study of economics to health to everything else. If you follow incentives, people have no incentive in finding out that these vaccines are actually dangerous because so many people took them. And so many people not only took them, but so many people went to bat for these pharmaceutical companies, like became brand ambassadors of Pfizer, Moderna, whoever, and like went on the attack against people like us that were sort of like, hey, stop. This is craziness, and you have got to stop this. This is not true. This is bullshit. And like, oh, what do you know? No, not much. But I think at some point, the government doesn't want this to come out. Pfizer doesn't want this to come out. Most people don't want this to come out. That's just the reality of where we are right now. So I'm not holding out a ton of hope, but I do think the tide is starting to turn. I don't think it's a majority that are on our side yet. I just think it's starting to shift in that direction. Right now, we're at the phase where even people that were pretty ardent supporters before are not any longer. You're losing people that, even if they're not like full blown, like, all right, you know what, let's go get them and find them. A lot of people are like, this is pointless. Why did I get all this?
I have a couple personal anecdotes from people who have determined that they're vax injured. Like they had some issues after they've kind of, reverse engineered their symptoms and being like, okay, I think it's this. So I do think it's coming out there. I do want to point out, and I appreciate Alex Berenson coming to my backing me up here, because I don't know if you saw when you were away, I posted about Grant Wall. And so if you remember, Grant Wall, very prominent soccer reporter, died covering the World Cup.
Yeah.
And because he was an advocate for gay rights and wore a rainbow shirt and tried to wear a rainbow shirt into one of the arenas and was detained, his brother came out and assumed that he was murdered by the Qatar government or some variation of that in response to his trying to push forward gay rights, right?
Oh, boy.
But what that did was created an independent autopsy on Grant Wall. So when I saw that, I was like, oh man, they're going to do an independent autopsy on this. Will this inadvertently bring down the vaccine regime, right? That was my hope. And I see Alex Berenson jumped right on that. Maybe he follows me. But he wrote an article about it, and then he followed up with an article about it. So the autopsy revealed that he died of a aneurysm. An aortic aneurysm. And there was they didn't release the autopsy report or anything like that. They just basically, and just by chance, Grant Wall's wife, Dr. Celine Gounder, an infectious disease physician who advocated for vaccine passports, basically came out and announced that it was an aneurysm, and basically says it could not have been a vaccine-related death, but there are papers that show aneurysms is a side effect of some of this stuff. So
you got to switch to edibles, man.
I do. At least before the show. But so the whole confluence of all this stuff is sad. I mean, his wife clearly pushing the vaccines. He was pushing the vaccines hard on Twitter, basically, and pushing back against unvaccinated people. So, I mean, it's sad. Don't get me wrong. All this stuff is sad. All these adverse events are sad, and there's no way to really know unless we go through a more detailed autopsy on this stuff. But
I think the problem you're having is that you're not even allowed to ask.
Yeah, I'm done being ashamed to ask anymore, because I mean, if I know the person closely, I'll have a personal conversation. But I'm not afraid to ask the follow-up to these sudden people who are dying suddenly, right? I mean, I feel like not doing it is you're being complicit in some way. Like if you know something and you have concerns about it, until those concerns are mitigated, that I would air your concerns, and that's where I'm at now. I'm just going to be airing my concerns on all this stuff. And anybody out there who's listening, you can take this as medical advice. Do not get the jab.
So the problem is, like, that there are side effects. Every medicine in the history of humankind has had side effects.
Except ivermectin, but go ahead.
Except for ivermectin. All right, fair enough. And that's okay, but we still need to be able to talk about it. And the idea that, all right, well, what is caused by the COVID vaccine. Well, we've seen links to strokes, to aneurysms, to a
bunch of cardiovascular stuff,
a lot of cardio problems, myocarditis, pericarditis,
and neurological stuff.
You've seen it goes through breast milk for women who just had children. It ends up in reproductive organs for women. It ends up in the sperm for men or testes for men. Like, it ends up in places they did not expect it to get to. That it's causing, and maybe it's nothing, we don't know. But the idea that we know anything for certain about the vaccines being safe is laughable. Like, there's not any merit to that claim.
Yeah, we have no safety data.
Right. So when you know, like, hey, the vaccine has been known to cause aortic aneurysms, there's some correlation, not necessarily causation, but we've been monitoring people, and we've seen amongst the people that got vaccinated at such and such a time, there's been a big jump in, we're seeing 4 times the rate of that happening. And then this guy, who's an avid COVID vaccine promoter, dies of that exact thing. And I'm the asshole for going, wait, like, no, it couldn't possibly, like, stop. You cannot say that sentence with any level of truth. Couldn't possibly is not wrong. You could say there's no evidence at this time. We haven't been able to correlate it. We haven't established causation. Those are all accurate statements. That you have conclusively demonstrated that it's not possible that this was in any way related to this vaccine is just false. That is a inherently, blatantly false statement. You cannot make that conclusion. You don't have the information. So the idea that you're dismissing it out of hand is what's so concerning. The idea that you are so prepared to act as if there's no chance Pfizer and Moderna would be okay with you just dying if you bought their product, then you haven't been paying attention to what these drug companies have been doing for the last 30 years. Sorry.
It hasn't stopped them before. They've killed people before, and they just keep going on right on doing it with protection from our government.
Right. And look at the opioid epidemic. Look at everything else that they were the central cause of. And they covered it up for years knowing that people were dying. And that's what you're dealing with. So if you're not allowed to be skeptical of that industry, what the hell should you be skeptical of? Like this is like watching the Department of Defense go and like they just dropped a bunch of bombs in Iran, and we look at the government and they're like, hey, I know we're missing some bombs, but I promise that wasn't us. Be like, wait, you're missing the exact bombs that just landed? And like, well, you conspiracy theorists. Like, there's a reason that we should be skeptical of these entities and these organizations and these people. And the idea that you're not allowed to point out, hey, somebody's got vertigo after the vaccine. Hey, well, that's been a common thing. A lot of people who got the vaccine and got boosted ended up getting getting vertigo. Do you think it's related? Oh my God, would you just stop? No, it's definitely not related. Okay. How do you know? What's wrong with saying maybe? I hope not. I didn't look into it. But no, I don't think so. All right, cool. But maybe let's stop giving these people the benefit of the doubt because they couldn't possibly deserve it less.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So hopefully this thing goes forward with the state of Florida and DeSantis, and they can pry out some information that can at least get this thing to stop. Like can we just end the emergency authorization? That's all I really ask for.
I'm past that point.
But if you do that, like all this other stuff has to go away with it.
Listen, I want to revoke the emergency authorization, and I want to go back and revoke the 1986 vaccine law that absolved them from any liability for any vaccine injury anywhere. I want both gone at this point. I'm done. You have lost such trust, and you have taken such advantage of being in this position of trust and of knowledge. You don't deserve any protection. You should be sued left, right, and center because you have demonstrated such a cavalier attitude towards human life that I can't stomach it. And I want to offer you no protections whatsoever. Is that an overreaction?
No.
All right,
let's move on to Twitter.
Yes.
I mean, there's not enough time. We could have done a whole show just on Twitter from the last 3 weeks.
It's amazing.
Before we get into Twitter, I'll remind everybody to please like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a rate and review if you're listening to this on your podcast there, and hopefully, spread the word, post the show. Help us with the algorithms.
Yeah, buddy.
Okay, Mr. Hussong. 6:20 p.m., December 18th, 2022. That's yesterday.
Okay.
Elon Musk tweets a poll. Should I step down as head of Twitter? I will abide by the results of this poll. Did you vote?
No, I'm going to do it now.
It's over.
Oh, darn it.
17,502 votes. Final results. 57.5% say yes.
Oh, boy.
Is Elon Musk, I assume he is, will step down from Twitter. Do you think he's going to step down from Twitter?
Yep.
I do too. Now, I'm assuming, and I have no information to do this other than when he first bought it, he talked about only being a temporary CEO and that he would find somebody else. So that was always in the back of my mind. But so maybe he found somebody, and this is the reason why he's running this poll, because he knew he was going to step down anyway, and he just wanted to kind of have the poll and get the engagement. I don't know. But
can he sell it to Donald Trump?
That was really my hope. Was that you could?
How fun would that be?
Having him. Listen, there's a bunch of people who I could think that would be fun CEOs. Not going to be Donald Trump. I'm almost guaranteed, but that would be.
I love that you have to say almost because it's Elon Musk and you don't know for sure. He might just do it.
Yeah. But so I don't expect some celebrity CEO of this company. I'm assuming it's going to be some financial nuts and bolts kind of guy, and who's going to basically make sure that the company is just run well, as opposed to trying to create engagement on his own Twitter profile like Elon does. I mean, I don't expect Elon to go away from Twitter.
No.
He's one of the most avid users on there, and so he can still own it and not be the CEO. So weirdness, right? Just whatever. I'm assuming he's stepping down, and who knows who the hell is going to be involved there. But we haven't really talked other than the very first batch of Twitter files. Mm-hmm. And, the left was basically claiming it to be a nothing burger, quote unquote. Actually, every single journalist used the word nothing burger, like they got notes down from high. And this is how you're going to do this, or you're running PR for the richest man in the world. Like literally that was 25 different tweets of the same exact nonsense. So I don't think we've talked since then about this. So did you have any revelations within the Twitter files themselves that was the one where you're like, oh my God, this I didn't. I mean, most of the stuff that I read was expected, and most of the stuff that we read, most people expected was happening. We just didn't have confirmation that it was happening. Now we have a lot of confirmation that there was government influence on not just general ideas on how to moderate content, but actually specific, hey, this user right here needs to be taken care of. Hey, this set of hashtags needs to be taken care of. It was all the government intervention and all the government influence that we had imagined, and probably more so, because it turns out, and that was probably the biggest takeaway that I had, was not only was Jim Baker head legal counsel of Twitter after being a complete shitbag and a bunch of other Russia hoax and a bunch of other nonsense, dude's a lizard person, but that the company has dozens of FBI informants on staff just kind of infiltrating and doing their thing while they're collecting a paycheck from Twitter. So that was my biggest takeaway, was just that it wasn't a isolated Jim Baker, basically vetting content, but it was a staff of former FBI or maybe current FBI informants kind of working under the blue bird there, making sure that our ivermectin shows are taken down.
It still feels like punching down.
I don't know. So what was any initial Twitter files takeaways?
I think there was just the confirmation of, I guess, it's not quite a smoking gun, but man, it's close. If you want to make the argument, it's a nothing burger and it's fine, whatever else, then I think I just have a fundamental disagreement with you on what the role of the government should be when it comes to policing speech.
Yeah, and I actually asked this somebody, random person on Twitter who was defending, saying this was nothing burger, whatever, and I'm like, okay, let me say that you're right for the time being, and that there was no violation of any First Amendment. Do you still think are you comfortable with, I think the way I worded it was, are you comfortable with the seemingly internal relationship and communication, direct communication from the FBI and the DHS and the DSI or the DNI, all these players with direct portals to Twitter for content moderation? And this person was like, well, yes, we have all these nefarious reasons why they're set up. Like, okay, but that's not why they set up this fucking. They didn't set it up for any of those reasons you just laid out. They set it up to ban Trump and Trump supporters.
It's amazing.
So maybe there should be some kind of, hey, this guy's a terrorist plotting a bombing of a school over here, and that's something that Twitter could be alerting to the FBI, right? But that's not what was happening here. They literally were just going after, and some of these people were nobodies, like literally nobodies, like 1,500 account like followers, like nobodies. And so the fact that they took such a specific target and took down specific users and hashtags, to me is at least a violation of the spirit of the First Amendment, no doubt in my mind. Whether or not it can be proven in some kind of court is, unknowable at this point for me anyway, but the fact that they have these open channel of communications is the problem.
Here's the flip side. If let's say none of this had ever occurred, 2016 rolls around, and then in the lead up to the 2018 midterms, you found out that Donald Trump had assigned Roger Stone or somebody else like that, somebody in his inner circle with some shady business dealings in the past, as the direct liaison with Twitter, and had put a bunch of pro-Trump people, had gotten hired there, and then they were friendly with each other. And at that point, it was Elon Musk running Twitter already. Maybe he's not the best example, but he'll do. Oh, no, My Pillow. What's that dude's name?
Mike Lindell.
Mike Lindell is running Twitter, all right? And you find out, all right, Mike Lindell's running Twitter. Trump's got a bunch of his old cronies going over there to work, and then they're getting people kicked off for disinformation about the election or about whatever else. You wouldn't have any objection? Not even the slightest hesitation or trepidation that, maybe we don't want this. Maybe this isn't the role of the government, is to tell us what is true and what is untrue. Maybe the role of the government is not to tell us what we are and are not ready to hear. Maybe we got to stop trusting the people that are in the government, because the people in the government are the least qualified people to lecture anybody about decency and trust. All right? That's the problem. Is full well if this was the other way, you'd have a problem with it, and rightly so, because it's not right. This is not the way that free speech is supposed to work. And as somebody who is, I'm about as close to being an extremist on free speech as I could possibly be. I can't stomach this as any type of force for good whatsoever. It's only for control. It's only for owning the narrative, owning the conversation. That's it. Because as soon as you take away my right to share information, that's a problem. You could tell me I got a nefarious purpose or intent. I disagree. But we're still supposed to have the free exchange of ideas. And if the government comes in and puts a thumb on the scale with all of its inherent power, with its subpoena power, with its regulatory power, with all of these other things that they can do to influence the direction a private company goes, every one of us should understand, historically speaking, when a government gets into this business, it's not awesome.
Yeah. No, it's the exact opposite of awesome. So
right.
I was going to read this one thing, and then I'll wrap it up here. But so this was I'm reading from an article from the Federalist. It's six hot, key takeaways from the thing. And the one at the very end here talks about suspicious timing. So apparently, San Francisco special agent, FBI special agent, that is, Elvis Chan, it's a hell of a name, had his own access to the teleporter message system within Twitter, and in an email dated October 16th, 2020.
Oh, boy.
Here's how it began. Twitter folks, I just got something hot off the press. This is from Elvis Chan, the special agent. He's addressing the Twitter staff. So he says, Twitter folks, I've just got something hot off the presses today. Now, the hot off the presses seems to line up quite well with the New York Post breaking of the Hunter Biden laptop story on October 14th, 2020. It seems as though the FBI, who obviously already knew that the laptop was real at this point, they owned the laptop at this point, was going to put something hot off the presses to basically twist the narrative into disinformation. So I don't know if this is, again, direct proof, but these were suspicious timing, let's just say, for these communications, right on the as the Hunter Biden laptop story was breaking, that Twitter, and we all know what happened with Twitter, is they basically banned that story completely. You could not even share it in a DM.
Yeah, that's just unjustifiable.
Yeah, no, there's nothing. They were suppressing information on behalf of the president. Period. End of story.
Or at the behest of the intelligence community, which either way is not okay.
The intelligence agency is running the presidency. So.
That's true.
But yeah. So I don't know. I'm guessing there's going to be more Twitter files. Can't wait for the, I don't know, we didn't even talk about Elon's pronouns.
Oh, yeah. Prosecute Fauci.
Yeah. So we have no COVID stuff yet, right? So I'm assuming that there's going to be a COVID drop,
true.
and that's going to be something
Legendary.
I'm going to be really into that. Hopefully, Elgato Malo is back live on Twitter for that day, because that'll be fun for him. All right, Mr. Hussong, anything else we should leave the folks with before we, I don't know, are we doing a show next, the 26th?
Maybe.
It's the day after Christmas, so I didn't know if you were still going to be opening presents.
I might be. It's a lot of kids, man.
Yeah. So tentatively, we don't know if there's going to be a show Monday or the following Monday, because that's the Monday after New Year's, right? So
that one's more likely.
Likely, yeah.
Yeah. 26, I would say. I'm going to be in Buffalo on Christmas until the 26th. I just don't know when we're coming back.
Let's assume no show for the time being, and if schedule changes, we'll figure that out, and that'll give me time to play around with my new internet.
Thank God you ended that sentence with internet.
No 0.4 dropped frames. Usually I'm getting like 30%.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, this new internet.
So this should have been seamless for the folks at home.
There you go.
So, will you let us know if you've made it this far to the end of the show? Can you please comment and let us know if the stream was smooth as a baby's bottom?
Weird.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a phrase. I didn't make it up. I didn't make it up.
I know. I've heard it. It's still weird.
It is weird. All right, folks. On that note, thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you all not next Monday, but 2 Mondays. We'll plan for January 2nd. And we'll maybe talk about how we're going to go move forward in 2023. I have some ideas we haven't even talked about yet, but I think you're going to be on board with them. So
probably.
So 2023, a new and improved Sports Clicks and Politics. So on that note, I thank you all again for tuning in. We'll see you all in 2 weeks, January 2nd, and Happy New Year, Happy Christmas, Merry Christmas,
Hanukkah,
Happy Holidays. Hanukkah started yesterday.
Yep. Was it Ramadan?
I don't think so.
No, it's not Ramadan.
No, I don't know all of them. But
I don't either. I'm so sorry.
Celebrate whatever holiday you celebrate, and be happy, be merry, and eat and drink and all that good stuff. So on that note, we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Thank you for watching and tuning in.